They laughed when she walked in. Not cruel laughter. Not the kind meant to wound. More like disbelief. The awkward sound people make when reality doesn't match expectation. Teenage girl. 16. Maybe 17. It was hard to tell in the dim light of the clubhouse. Standing alone in a biker clubhouse filled with men twice her size. 3 times her age. Men whose hands bore scars from chain repairs and bar fights. Whose faces told stories they'd never speak aloud. Leather vests hung heavy on broad shoulders. Tattoos crawled up forearms and necks, eagles, skulls, names of brothers who'd fallen. Hard eyes that had seen too much of the world stared back at her from beneath bandanas and worn caps. The air smelled of motor oil, cigarette smoke, and whiskey. The jukebox in the corner played old Skinnerd. But the music seemed distant now, drowned out by the sudden attention on this girl who didn't belong. Someone muttered, "Wrong place, kid." Another chuckled, shaking his head. "Lost." A third voice, from somewhere in the back. "Someone's daughter gonna be in trouble when daddy finds out she's here." More laughter. Not malicious, just amused, confused. This was their sanctuary, their territory. A place where the outside world's rules didn't apply, where men who'd been judged their whole lives could exist without explanation. And now a girl, barely old enough to drive, stood in their doorway. She didn't flinch. Her hands didn't tremble. Her eyes didn't drop to the floor. She didn't explain herself. She didn't apologize for interrupting their Thursday night gathering. She didn't turn around and walk back out that door. She simply stood there and slowly reached up to the zipper of her jacket. The room kept laughing, conversations resuming, someone calling for another round, until they saw the patch. A small, worn emblem stitched onto the vest beneath her jacket. Not flashy, not new. Not one of those pristine patches you could buy online, trying to fake a history you'd never lived. This one was faded, frayed at the edges, the colors muted by years of sun and rain and road dust. But unmistakable. The laughter died mid-breath. Chairs stopped scraping against the concrete floor. Pool cues froze mid-stroke. Conversations cut off like someone had pulled a plug. Because every biker in that room, every single one, knew exactly what that patch meant. It wasn't hers. Couldn't be. You couldn't buy that patch. You couldn't earn it in a weekend rally. You couldn't inherit it. But there it was. It belonged to her father, Tommy Ironside Sullivan, a man who had once ridden beside them, bled beside them, laughed with them over engine troubles and celebrated with them through births and weddings. A man who'd taken a bullet for the club president during a confrontation outside a bar in '09. A man who'd ridden through a snowstorm to deliver medicine to another brother's sick kid. A man who'd never asked for anything in return. A man who never came back from his last ride. 3 years ago, Highway 70. A drunk driver crossed the center line at 90 miles an hour. Tommy died on impact. Never even knew what hit him. The club had carried his casket. Every single member. They'd revved their engines at his funeral until the whole cemetery shook with the sound. And now his daughter stood before them, wearing his patch like armor. The girl finally spoke. Her voice was steady, quiet, but it carried across that silent room like a rifle shot. "My dad said if I ever needed help, I should come here." Silence. The kind of silence that weighs heavy, that presses against your chest. The club president, a man called Granite, 6'5", 300 pounds, beard down to his chest, stared at her with eyes suddenly bright. Then one biker stood up. Jax, Tommy's riding partner for 15 years. Then another, Bones, who'd taught Tommy how to rebuild a carburetor. One by one, hardened men. Men who'd been to prison, who'd been to war, who'd seen friends die on the asphalt. Removed their caps, their sunglasses, their pride. Some pressed fists to their hearts. Others bowed their heads. The president of the club stepped forward, his boots heavy on the floor. He stopped 3 feet from the girl. His voice, usually commanding and loud, came out low and steady, almost gentle. Any daughter of his is family. He held out his hand. She took it. Her grip was firm, steady. "What's your name, little sister?" "Maya. Maya. I'm Granite. Your father saved my life once. Did he ever tell you that?" She shook her head. "He wouldn't have. That was Tommy. Never needed the credit." Granite's voice cracked slightly. "What kind of help do you need?" And that's when the story poured out. Her mother had died when she was 8. Cancer. Tommy had raised her alone, working 2 jobs, teaching her to ride, to fix engines, to stand tall. When Tommy died, Maya went to live with her aunt. But her aunt's boyfriend had other ideas. Started making comments. Started showing up in doorways when Maya was changing. Started touching her shoulder just a little too long. Last week, it escalated. Maya ran. Took her father's old bike from the garage. The one she'd helped him restore. The one he'd promised would be hers someday. She'd been sleeping in truck stops. Spending her last dollars on gas and vending machine food. She was out of options. Out of money. Out of hope. Until she remembered her father's words, spoken years ago during one of their rides. "If anything ever happens to me, and you need help, real help, you go to the Ironclad Brothers. You tell them you're Tommy's daughter. They'll take care of you." She'd thought it was just something father said. Empty comfort. But she'd been desperate enough to try. And now she stood in this room, surrounded by giants, waiting to see if her father's promise held weight. Granite turned to face his brothers. "Jax, Bones, get her bike looked at, full service. Tires, brakes, fluids, everything. On it, boss. Torch. She needs a place to stay. Clear out the upstairs apartment. Get it cleaned. Stocked with food. Consider it done. Reaper, I want you and 3 others to visit Maya's aunt. Explain the situation. Make it very clear what happens if anyone, and I mean anyone, comes looking for her here." Reaper smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Be my pleasure." Granite looked back at Maya. "You're safe now. You understand? This is your home for as long as you need it." Maya's composure finally cracked. Tears welled up, spilled over. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank us. Your father earned this 100 times over. We're just paying back a debt we should have paid long ago." That night, she didn't leave alone. They fixed her bike, tightened the chain, replaced the brake pads, topped off every fluid, even gave it a fresh wash. Bones, the grizzled mechanic who rarely smiled, handed her the keys with tears in his eyes. "Your old man taught you to ride on this, didn't he?" She nodded. "He'd be proud. You ride like him. Smooth, confident, not cocky." They paid 3 months of her rent up front. No arguments. No expectations of repayment. Granite's wife, Maria, a woman who'd been through hell herself and come out stronger, showed up with bags of groceries, clothes, toiletries, even a small stuffed bear, because everyone needs something soft in a hard world. And when Maya finally rode home that night, she wasn't alone. 23 motorcycles surrounded her. A wall of roaring engines and flashing chrome. They escorted her through town like she was royalty. Like she was precious cargo that couldn't be risked. People on the sidewalks stopped and stared. Some took pictures. Others instinctively knew something significant was happening. When they reached her new apartment, the bikers formed a perimeter. They stayed until she was inside, until the lights were on, until they knew she was safe. Granite was the last to leave. "We ride every Thursday. You're welcome anytime." And Maya, "Yeah, your father's patch? You earned the right to wear it tonight. But remember, it's not about the leather or the emblem. It's about what you do with it. How you treat people. How you show up when others need help. That's what made your father a brother. That's what'll make you family." She nodded, unable to speak. He tipped his cap and rode off into the night. And no one ever laughed again. Not at Maya. Not at the girl who walked into a biker clubhouse wearing her father's legacy. Word spread fast in their world. Within a week, bikers from 3 states knew the story. Tommy's daughter, protected by the Ironclad Brothers. Untouchable. 6 months later, Maya graduated high school, top of her class. Granite and Maria sat in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. She got a scholarship to a technical college. Wanted to become a mechanical engineer. Gonna design better bikes, she told Bones with a grin. Hell, we'll be your first customers, he laughed. But she never forgot. Every Thursday night, she showed up at the clubhouse. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. She learned their names, their stories, their pain. She listened when Jax talked about losing his son to an overdose. She held Maria's hand when Maria admitted she'd been abused as a child. She helped Torch rebuild his confidence after a motorcycle accident left him with a limp and nightmares. She became what her father had been, someone who showed up, who cared, who protected. And years later, when she finally received her own patch, earned through service, loyalty, and love, she wore it next to her father's. 2 patches, 2 legacies, 1 family. Because respect isn't about age, or size, or fear. Sometimes, it's stitched into a patch, and carried in the courage to wear it. Sometimes it's about showing up when you're scared. Sometimes it's about honoring the dead by protecting the living. And sometimes it's about understanding that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's forged in leather and chrome, in loyalty tested by fire, in promises kept across the grave. Tommy Ironside Sullivan never came home, but his daughter did. And she brought his spirit with her, into that room, into those hearts, into a brotherhood that will carry both their names forward into roads yet traveled. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful stories of respect, loyalty, and redemption. You never know which one will stay with you forever, because some stories aren't just told, they're lived, and some patches aren't just worn, they're earned.